There is a moment, a specific, precise, psychologically devastating moment that happens in the mind of every person who has ever tried to control you, manipulate you, or hold power over you. It is the moment they realize, for the first time, that it is not working anymore. That the buttons they pressed no longer produce a reaction. That the silence they used to get to you has somehow stopped landing. That the approval they withheld, the approval you used to hunger for in a way that kept you exactly where they wanted you, no longer produces the desperate reaching they had come to rely on. And what happens in that moment is not what most people expect. They do not simply move on. They do not accept it gracefully. They panic, quietly, privately, in the hidden place where people feel the ground disappear beneath them. Today, we are going inside that moment, inside the psychology of what actually happens when you genuinely stop needing someone who expected you to need them forever. And more importantly, we are going to show you exactly how Marcus Aurelius built this power, how Epictetus lived it in chains, and how you can begin developing it starting today. Stay until the very end, because the final truth in this video is the one that ties everything together. And it will change the way you walk into every room for the rest of your life. 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor sat alone in his private chamber and wrote words he never intended for any other person to read. Not proclamations, not strategies, not the public philosophy of a man performing wisdom for an audience. Private words, honest words, the words of a man working through something deeply difficult in silence. He wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." But there was a third principle running beneath everything Marcus Aurelius wrote, never stated as directly, but present in every page of his private journals. If it is not within your control, release it completely. Not partially, not strategically, completely. He was not writing about productivity. He was not writing about time management or life optimization. He was writing about the single most difficult psychological achievement available to a human being, the genuine, complete, utterly unsentimental release of needing a specific outcome from a specific person. The release of caring what they thought, what they said, whether they approved or disapproved, acknowledged or ignored, valued or dismissed. And what Marcus Aurelius discovered through years of daily practice in the most demanding environment imaginable was something that dark psychology has only recently begun to understand and document. When you genuinely stop needing what someone has been withholding from you, when the dependency that gave them power over you dissolves completely, something happens in them that they cannot control. Something ancient, something primal, something that lives in the deepest layer of human psychology, where the need to matter, the need to have influence over the people around you, operates below conscious thought. They begin to come apart at a level they cannot name. They begin to reach for something they can no longer find. They begin to panic. Here is the psychological mechanism, and understanding it precisely is what will allow you to use it deliberately rather than accidentally. Every human being on the planet, without exception, builds their sense of psychological safety partly on the predictable behavior of the people around them. We are social creatures at the deepest level, and our brains are constantly running quiet background calculations about who is in our orbit, what they need from us, and how much influence we have over them. This is not manipulation. This is survival. For most of human history, knowing where you stood with the people around you, knowing who depended on you, who you could rely on, who needed what you had, was the difference between safety and catastrophe. And the brain treats the sudden loss of this information with the same alarm it once used for physical threats. When someone who has been emotionally dependent on you, who has been reliably producing the reactions you expected, the reaching you anticipated, the hunger for your approval that confirmed your influence, suddenly stops producing those things, the brain reads this as a threat. Not consciously, not in a way the person could easily articulate, but at the neurological level where threat responses are generated. The body releases the same chemicals, the same scanning behavior begins, the same urgent drive to restore the situation to something predictable, something known, something safe. This is why people who ignored you suddenly reach out when you stop trying. This is why the approval that was withheld is suddenly offered when you no longer need it. This is why the power dynamic in relationships that have felt fixed for years suddenly shifts, not when you fight back, not when you demand change, but when you simply, quietly, genuinely stop caring whether it changes. Epictetus understood this mechanism with terrifying clarity. He was born into slavery. Everything external, his freedom, his safety, his physical well-being, was at the mercy of other people. And yet he became one of the freest men who ever lived. Not by gaining freedom in the external sense, by developing something that no one could take from him, regardless of what they did to his circumstances. He wrote, "Men are disturbed not by the things which happen to them, but by the opinions about the things." Read that carefully. Not men are disturbed by things, by their opinions about things, by the story they tell themselves about what those things mean. And the most enslaving story, the one that kept more people locked in psychological dependency than any physical chain, was the story that said, "I need this person's approval to be okay. I need their attention to feel real. I need their validation to know that I matter." Epictetus dismantled this story, not through philosophy as an academic exercise, through the daily, relentless, completely non-negotiable practice of returning his attention to what was actually within his control, his judgments, his responses, his inner state, his own opinion of himself. And in doing so, in building a foundation that required nothing from the people who owned him, he became completely unreachable. Not cold, not distant, not absent from his life or his relationships. Unreachable. The place inside him where his peace lived was simply not accessible to anyone outside. And the people around him, including the people who technically owned him, felt this, felt the disorienting reality of someone who could not be moved without their permission, and did not know what to do with it.
Now let us talk about what this actually looks like in the real situations of your real life. Because the philosophy is clear, but the application, the actual, practical, moment-by-moment experience of building and living from this place is where most people lose the thread. Think about the person in your life right now who holds the most influence over your emotional state. Not the person you love most, the person whose opinion of you carries the most weight, whose silence makes you check your behavior, whose approval, when it arrives, produces a relief that tells you everything about how tightly you have been holding your breath, waiting for it. Now ask yourself honestly, what specifically do you need from this person? Not want, need. What is the thing that their withholding of produces in you a state of genuine disturbance, a state that pulls your attention, disrupts your focus, and quietly shapes your behavior around them in ways you may not have fully acknowledged? Identify it. Name it specifically, because you cannot release what you cannot see. And most people have been so close to their need for so long that they have stopped seeing it. It has become the water they swim in, the invisible background against which everything in the relationship operates. Marcus Aurelius had a practice for this kind of seeing. Every morning before the day began, he would sit in silence and review his own inner state with the detached curiosity of a physician examining a patient, not with judgment, not with self-criticism, with genuine, honest, completely clear observation. He would ask himself, where am I not free today? Where is there something outside me that my peace is currently dependent on? And whatever the honest answer revealed, whatever the specific person or outcome or approval that his peace was tethered to, he would spend that quiet morning time working to loosen the tether, not through force, not through pretending he did not care, through the deliberate, patient, completely genuine practice of returning his attention to what was actually his values, his judgments, his capacity for clear thought, his own considered opinion of his own life, until the tether gradually, incompletely at first, then more fully with practice, began to loosen.
And here is what happened as it loosened. The people around Marcus Aurelius, the senators who tried to manipulate him, the advisors who sought to influence him through flattery, the enemies who probed for emotional vulnerabilities they could exploit, began to find that their usual approaches produced unexpected results. The flattery that worked on every emperor before him landed differently with Marcus. He received it without being moved by it. He heard it without needing it. He acknowledged it without being changed by it. And this quality of receiving without needing, produced in the people around him a response they had not anticipated. They worked harder to reach him. They became more careful, more deliberate, more genuinely respectful in how they approached him. Not because he demanded respect, because he had created, through the consistent daily practice of not needing theirs, a dynamic in which their respect was the only thing they had left to offer someone who was not interested in anything else. This is the paradox at the heart of everything we are discussing today. The less you need from people, the more they want to give you. The less their opinion affects you, the more carefully they curate what they offer. The less available you are to be moved by what they do or do not do, the more they feel the weight of their own behavior in relation to you. Because you have removed from the dynamic the thing that made their behavior easy and consequence-free. Your dependency on their approval, your need for their acknowledgement, your hunger for the thing they were withholding. Without those things, without your visible, reliable, completely exploitable need, they are left alone with their own choices. And people behave very differently when they are alone with their choices and cannot rely on your dependency to absorb the consequences.
Let us go into the specific psychology of what happens in someone's mind when they realize you have genuinely stopped caring. Because this is where the panic lives, and understanding it clearly will help you recognize it when you see it, and help you resist the very natural instinct to relieve it by becoming available again. The first stage is disbelief. Their brain cannot immediately accept that the shift is real. You have been a reliable source of a specific kind of emotional response for so long that the pattern is deeply encoded. And the brain, which is fundamentally a prediction machine, resists updating predictions that have been consistently confirmed. So the first response is usually an escalation of the behavior that previously produced the desired reaction. If they withheld attention to get yours, they withhold more. If they withdrew approval, they withdraw it more completely. If they provoked to get a reaction, they provoke harder. Not because they have consciously decided this is the right move, because their brain is running the last successful program and waiting for the output it expects. When it does not come, when the escalated behavior produces the same absence of reaction as the original behavior, the second stage begins: confusion. The program is not working, and the brain does not yet know why or what to run instead.
This confusion produces a specific and very recognizable behavior: inconsistency. The person begins switching between approaches rapidly and somewhat desperately. Warm, then cold, present, then absent, apologetic, then aggressive. They are not being deliberately strategic. They are cycling through options because nothing is working, and they do not understand why. And then the third stage arrives, the one that looks like panic because it is. They begin reaching. Not dramatically, not always visibly, but the behavior shifts in a direction that would have been unrecognizable a month ago. The message they never sent, the acknowledgement they never offered, the behavior they never showed when you were still hoping they would. It arrives now, not because they have changed, because they have lost the certainty that you will always be there. And the loss of that certainty, the loss of the predictable, reliable, endlessly patient dependency they had built their behavior around, produces in them the one experience they were least prepared for: the experience of being the one who needs something, the experience of being on the other side of the dynamic. And it is not comfortable, it is not familiar, and for many of them, for the ones who have operated from a position of power in your dynamic for a long time, it is genuinely alarming. This is the moment that most people ruin, the moment when all the work, all the quiet, patient, genuinely difficult work of building genuine independence produces its first visible result. And the instinct is immediate, to relieve their distress, to reassure them, to become available again in the way that was comfortable and familiar and predictably safe. To go back, because going back feels like compassion, like maturity, like the emotionally healthy choice. But it is none of these things. It is the one move that undoes everything you have been building, because the moment you become reliably available again, the moment you respond to their reaching with the full, warm, immediately accessible version of yourself they lost, the brain updates its prediction. The program that was breaking is restored.
And the dynamic returns to where it was. Not immediately, not all at once, but it returns. Because you have just confirmed the one belief they most needed to be corrected, that you will always be there, that the dependency they had come to rely on is not actually gone, it was just temporarily unavailable. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." The key is in the final phrase, with all your heart, not with all your need, not from a place of desperate hoping that they will return what you give, with all your heart, which is complete, which is full, which does not require their reciprocation to remain whole. This is the quality that produces genuine connection, not the dependency that mimics it. And it is the quality that, when you embody it fully, makes the people in your life treat you with a care and a deliberateness that they simply cannot maintain towards someone they take for granted. The path to this place is not dramatic. It does not require a single confrontation, a single announcement, a single speech about what you deserve and what you will no longer accept. It requires only one thing: the daily practice of returning to yourself. Not as a strategy, as a commitment. The commitment to spend at least as much time attending to your own inner life, your values, your development, your genuine experience of being the person you are, as you currently spend attending to what other people think of that person. This is the practice Marcus Aurelius maintained every single morning of his life. This is the practice Epictetus built a philosophy around that has survived 2,000 years. And this is the practice that, maintained consistently over time, produces the one result that no amount of strategy or social skill or clever behavior can manufacture. The genuine, completely real, utterly unperformative quality of someone who does not need anything from the room they are standing in. And the rooms and the people in them will feel it. Before you say a word, before you make a move, before you do anything different, they will feel the ground shift, and the panic will follow. Quietly, privately, in the place where people feel the loss of something they took for granted for far too long.
Subscribe to Dark Stoic. Every single week, we go exactly this deep into the psychology the most powerful people in history actually lived. This is only the beginning. Subscribe and begin building the foundation that nothing and no one can take from you.